The U.S. State Department says it is temporarily suspending interviews for all potential foreign university and college students while it deepens vetting of those already in the pipeline, especially to examine their social media accounts. Secretary of State Marco Rubio noted the man accused of killing Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram, two Israeli embassy staffers in Washington, D.C. last week, yelled, "Free Palestine," a familiar cry at multiple elite university campus protests since October 7th, 2023.
We have implemented a vigorous new visa policy that will prevent foreign nationals from coming to the United States to foment hatred against our Jewish community. We are holding international organizations and nations accountable for rhetoric against Israel that resurfaces in the manifesto of monsters, like Yaron and Sarah's killer.
Education Secretary Linda McMahon told Fox's America Reports Wednesday.
It is, this is not a First Amendment case, which is being alleged. This is a civil rights case.
When President Trump was asked about it in the Oval Office, he brought up Harvard as tensions escalate between his administration and the university. In April, the president demanded changes to Harvard to include ending DEI programs and hires. They then froze some grant and contract money. The president has threatened the university's tax-exempt status, and Homeland Security is now trying to end Harvard's ability to enroll foreign students. The president reacted Wednesday.
We have people who want to go to Harvard and other schools. They can't get in because we have foreign students there. But I want to make sure that the foreign students are people that can love our country.
A federal judge has blocked the administration's efforts to stop foreign student enrollment for now, but the State Department's broader effort to do deeper dives on all prospective foreign students remains the plan.
I would be surprised if even the most favorable judge in the most favorable district would try to enjoin this type of temporary suspension. What the Trump administration is saying is that they want to examine how these applications are vetted to make sure that we're taking greater care as to who's coming into the country.
Jonathan Turley is a Fox News contributor and Shapiro Professor of Public Interest Law at George Washington University.
That is right in the heart of executive powers and controlling our borders and national security.
How significant is that reasoning? Look, we just want to vet future prospective students more deeply. In particular, looking at their social media posts, it sort of indicates to us that if a deeper dive is headed in that direction, maybe we haven't thus far been looking at a lot of social media posts. Do a lot of, applicants now increase their security settings on their social media posts? Like, how do we do this?
Well, there may be some change in conduct as people learn of these threshold inquiries. The United States has been known as a fairly open border, not just in terms of the controversy at the southern border, but also in terms of student visas and other entries. That was based on our desire for people to come here, to study here, to join as part of this community. Those are all very good reasons. But this is not a new issue. For years, many have suggested that the United States needs to tighten a bit in terms of looking at who's coming in on these student visas. It was always viewed as the easiest path for entry into the United States was to secure a student visa.
If more students end up being rejected, like let's say, I got into Harvard, I live abroad and I got into Harvard or I got into Yale, and then they're denied the student visa, even though they have an acceptance letter from one of these universities. Is that where we might see more lawsuits or more sort of legal reaction to this decision?
I would expect that would be true, although I'm still not confident that those challenges would have much in terms of their chances in court. The courts have largely deferred to the executive branch in regulating our borders and entries. There is a concern among the free speech community, and it's not a trivial one, as to how much the United States government will discriminate on the basis of viewpoints. Even if someone criticizes the United States, that does not mean that they're a danger to the United States. Quite to the contrary, some people may criticize the United States because they feel that we're not living up to our own values. So it is a dangerous course if you take too broad an approach or a too arbitrary of an approach in looking at speech content.
Interesting. Yes. Tell me about that a little bit more. I know you are at times on a college campus yourself, for obvious reasons. The protests we've seen mostly on these college campuses, and we've heard Secretary of State Rubio react to them, and we've heard President Trump react to them, are very much pro-Palestinian, sometimes pro-Hamas, anti-Israel. It seems that that's what this administration is reacting to. How do you respond to that when it comes to the free speech argument if they are here on a visa and they're not American citizens?
Well, first, in terms of any issue that goes into court, you have to keep in mind that Harvard itself completed a study and found that they had created or allowed the establishment of a hostile environment for Jewish students. So the university itself came to that conclusion. Obviously, outside groups have also come to that conclusion. So there's a real issue here that the Trump administration is identifying. If you had a university that found that they'd created a hostile environment for African Americans or women, there would be a lot of outrage of people saying, well, how can we fund those schools? So there is a bit of hypocrisy here among critics. Now, having said that, once again, there is a concern among the free speech community. You are allowed to protest against Israel, to protest for Palestinian rights. The administration created, I thought, a clear high ground when it said it was focusing on students that were engaging in unlawful conduct, the taking over of buildings, the threatening of individual students, the committing of trespass. All of those things are potential criminal acts. You're not allowed to do that if you're here upon the discretion of the United States government as a student. Now, what concerns some of us is that the administration has also claimed that they can remove people because of the content of their speech, even aside from any type of criminal conduct. That gets into a grayer area. Obviously Hamas is a terrorist organization, and many of us have seen protests supporting Hamas and even some supporting what happened in the massacre of Jewish citizens by Hamas. That is a serious problem for universities where we have to guarantee that Jewish students feel safe, and you have protests saying in some cases that Hamas was justified in doing what it did. Well, what it did was murder. What it did was the commission of rape, the killing of children, the taking of hostages. So this puts universities in a very tough position. I'm hoping that the university and the Trump administration can still reach an accommodation. There has to be a balance here, and part of that balance has to be to guarantee free speech while we also guarantee the safety of students on our campuses.
So we've been talking about those who want to come here, and you just referenced those who are already here. I want to ask you a little bit more about that because Secretary of State Rubio had said we were revoking 300 visas. I know the case of Mahmoud Khalil out of Colombia, that's moving forward while he's detained. He has permanent residency status, but he may end up being deported. That's different from the case of, for example, Rumeysa Ozturk, the Tufts student. She's been ordered released even though her visa's been revoked. She wrote a pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel op-ed. Do we have an understanding about who can be deported, who can be detained if their visa's revoked or other sort of status is questioned? Or does each case sort of need to move through the legal process on its own here and be adjudicated on its own?
Well, that's a great question because it is disconcerting that many of us do not know what that standard is as you compare these cases. Khalid is a little different because the administration insists that he was involved in what became a protest with violent and criminal elements, and that he was not just simply a pedestrian or an onlooker, but someone that played a significant role in that. The question of how much they have to show is being answered by the administration by saying not much. I mean, the administration is saying that under the federal statute, Secretary Rubio just needs to find a reasonable basis to believe that the conduct of this individual may undermine the national security of the United States. That's a very forgiving standard.
Let me get your thoughts on the president's threat to pull grant funding to Harvard. Because more importantly within that is the administration's attempt to block Harvard from enrolling international students. I did not realize this, but nearly 30% of their students are not from the United States. The attempt to stop international enrollment has been blocked by a federal judge for now, but is the State Department's effort to vet international students more carefully likely a reaction to what's happening here at Harvard at a more tailored level?
I should say that even though I have been a fierce critic of Harvard's, I think that the administration needs to consider the economic and cultural impact of this. Now, having said that, I wrote a column that says that this is a war of attrition that Harvard's likely to lose, even if they prevail in courts. It's sort of like in the Civil War when General Grant said that he was quite satisfied to stay and fight on this line for as long as it takes, because Grant knew that his opponent could not suffer the casualties and would lose in a war of attrition. Well, the same is true with Harvard, even with its massive endowment. Trump is actually showing a fair degree of knowledge about higher education. Foreign students are the soft underbelly of American higher education. Harvard has over 27% foreign enrolled students. Most of those students pay a full ride. And so Harvard and other universities are desperate to get foreign students because they do pay a full ticket. So if you squeeze out federal grants and you freeze foreign enrollments, even a university like Harvard is going to start to have trouble catching wind. I mean, it's a major blow. So this could get tied up in the courts for years. In the meantime, it places this big red light on Harvard, that it is persona non grata. And so researchers, students are, maybe more likely to go to University of Chicago or some other school, MIT, that is not in the crosshairs of this controversy.
Interesting. Professor Turley, I could ask you several more questions, but I'll let you go. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Great to talk to you.